Hey there guys, it's Mothership checking in to give you the lowdown in Group G of the GSL round of 32 featuring mous, Deer, SK Telecom T1 Dark, Incredible Miracle YongHwa, and Startail Life. So, the first best of 3 in Group G was between Deer and the Dark Horse Dark. The first game begins on Habitation Station with a safe gateway expand out of Deer and a hatch gas pool out of Dark. As is becoming extremely popular, Deer decides to take the gold base as a second base, while Dark with quick link speed and a roach warren looks prepared to capitalize on these split points of contention. Deer, with this Stargate, gets an Oracle that does a huge amount of damage, killing drones while the roaches are out to play. Likewise, Dark does break the main and kills a few probes, but gets repelled and Deer stabilizes while Dark is left in shambles. Taking his third base at the same time as his Zerg opponent, Deer pushes out with a solid Void Ray Gateway army and takes the win easily. It is now up to Dark to show Deer what he has on Daedalus Point, and again we see very similar openers, including the Roach Rush out of Dark that almost gets scouted by Deer, to which Deer then makes a Phoenix due to his lack of knowledge, giving Dark the best shot possible. With the wider ramp and the lack of scouting, Dark is able to ravage the wall of Deer and is able to deal nearly game-ending damage. Deer, though, making use of what he's got, and Dark being a bit lax and negligent, is able to use 2 Void Rays and a Phoenix to kill a bunch of Queens and harass the third while defending a Roach counter. The counter of Roach Hydra by Dark, though, is too strong, and Dark is able to take a solid game number 2. Now tied 1-1, Deer picks Altazim as the arena for battle, and both players get their respective expansions incredibly greedy. Deer goes Stargate, gets 2 Oracles, one of which dies while getting his third, and Dark tucks up to Spire, planning to make use of the massive expanse of the map. Deer, though, trying to be tricky, moves out with an unorthodox gateway with Blink and Oracle push that Dark, although lacking Larva, is able to defend with Ling Roach while getting his 4th base. The Mutas also get unleashed, and Dark, distracting with Roaches and Lings at the third and using his Mutas to pull Deer apart at his natural, begins taking a really strong lead. Dark has kicked up his play to a whole new level, and with Deer going for Phoenixes to respond to the small number of Mutas that were created, goes for another attack with Ultras on the way and decimates Deer's natural and deals heavy damage to the third, forcing Deer down surprisingly to the losers match. The second series of the night to decide who will face Dark in the winner's match will be between YongHwa and Life. Game 1 starts out with more greedy play by Life on Altazim, but YongHwa, making use of the Protoss Warped mechanic and in a display of mind games, goes for a straight up 4-gate. Life gets wind of it with some scouting Lings and sees it with his Overlord. With only slow Lings and Queens, Life desperately tries to get Spines out, and with a nice engagement on the ramp and due to an overzealous YongHwa, Life defends and sacks his natural, forcing YongHwa to just take an expansion himself, putting Life at a huge advantage. Working with what he already has, YongHwa adds on 2 more gates and gets Blink and prepares for another all-in. Life, though, has ever-present Lings and sees the attack in time and buys as much time as possible. With the static defense from earlier and using Lings to stop Warpins, even against some sick force fields out of YongHwa, Life is able to defend after eradicating the sentries and gets the early advantage in the series. Being able to shake off game number 1 just as a coin flip 4-gate, it is now up to YongHwa to bring the series back on Heavy Rain. YongHwa starts off interestingly with the Nexus first, then Forge on one of the smaller maps in the map pool. Everything looks pretty normal except for the drone pull by Life after scouting the Nexus first. YongHwa must be so glad he went for Forge instead of Gateway and is barely able to wall off, forcing Life to drone drill his way through. Life is able to drill his way through, but YongHwa gets a Zealot out and it looks like he's going to defend, but then somehow Life gets him on the run. Unfortunately for Life, with only 1 drone mining at home, the Mothership core gets out for YongHwa and Life GG's out. Game number 3, Pylon blocking the natural of Life on Polar Knight. YongHwa goes for a gateway expand and Life takes his 2nd expo at the 3rd and his 3rd hatch at the natural. Going for Stargate Phoenixes, YongHwa also gets Blink and chronos it out and goes up to 6 gates. Life, though, with his Star Sense, feels something strange and produces over 60 lings, adding in roaches. With so many stalkers and with great blinks, YongHwa jukes left and right to avoid the spines and does an amazing job for so long. But the higher economy and upgrades means life will eventually hold and will be facing off in a ZVZ in the winners match. With both Pronosses being knocked down to the losers match, that means Life and Dark will have to compete in a ZVZ to see which one will move on to the round of 16 and which will have to face off against another Protoss for another shot. We begin with an early pool out of Dark against Life, who goes pool, then hatch. Some great micro comes out of both players, but Life finds a way to save his hatch with almost no losses, excluding some lost mining time. To follow up, Dark gets a Baneling Nest and a far later hatch, so he must do some damage. The attack does kill a few drones, but Dark is still pretty far behind. Life plays it safe, and Dark in a second major engagement is able to take out the third and runs Banelings into the natural that are able to kill a bunch of drones and the previously weakened hatch with Splash. Life with the Roach counter push must do damage and is able to break the half-finished spine wall and forces Dark to tap out. Game number 2 begins completely mirrored, both going pool first, then hatch until Dark gets a slightly quicker gas. With that faster gas, Dark gets a faster lair and +1 missile attack, while Life gets a faster third. Life during this period makes a bunch of links and is actually able to get a kill on the third. Dark then counters with the larger roach count, but the defender's advantage allows Life to save his own hatch with a sick hold, putting Dark massively behind. Both players mass up roaches and Dark decides to commit to an engagement that does not go favorably for him, while simultaneously Life uses roaches to harass the third of Dark, and eventually catching Dark out of position, Life finds a way and pushes through to the round of 16. Now for a PvP to decide whether we will have a rematch between Deer and Dark, or if YongHwa will get a shot to advance over both. Game 1 of this mirror matchup begins on Yonsu. Now, nothing too variable happens in PvP until the Cybernex core gets put down. Both players go 2-gate into 3-gate, then Twilight, opening exactly the same. Deer tries to put on the pressure, but YongHwa is able to pick off one very early Stalker, making the defense far more easy, until he loses 2 Stalkers to the nice force field of Deer. But killing another Stalker of Deer evens up the count. The superior control of Deer ends up being too much, and with the slightly faster blink, Deer is able to deal economic damage. Although YongHwa holds and Deer plays it safe, eventually Deer takes the first game. Game number 2, and no early shenanigans are displayed in the early stages of this game. Stargates come out by both players and both go for Phoenixes first, but YongHwa gets them out more quickly and he kills the Mothership core of Deer that was out to scout, giving him map control. Deer though does something amazing. First, he gets the faster expansion, then hallucinates an extra Phoenix that tanks the first couple of shots of YongHwa's Phoenixes and allows Deer to then take the Phoenix advantage, actually leading by 3. With that lead, Deer is able to force out YongHwa and kill the expansion, then takes game number 2 to face off against Dark in the final best of 3 of the night in an extremely quick series. Now for the rematch between Deer and Dark. Going directly into the first game, we have cross spawns on Frost, with Deer going for a 1-base double gas and the Stargate Oracle into then expanding against a 14 pool 15 hatch. Not being entirely prepared though, Dark allows the Oracle to get 6 kills and to scout like mad. In the meantime, Deer actually gets a third far more quickly than Dark. Deer, against a heavy roach composition, goes for double Robo Immortal with blink at +2 attack, following up with Colossi, and begins to move out with 5 Immortals just as the Hydras of Dark are coming out, but waits for the Colossi, buying him some time. Dark though ends up being the aggressive one with Vipers, and the Roach Hydra composition just gets shredded by the heavy Robo plus High Templar composition. The counter push is far too much for Dark to deal with, and Deer takes game number 1 confidently. Daedalus Point is potentially the last map for Dark and a chance for Deer to close out the series and advance to the round of 16 of GSL Code S. Okay, so Deer blocks the natural of Dark while Dark builds a hatch at the natural of Deer. Deer in response builds probes to cause a cancel and also builds a photon cannon at the wall. With a weird beginning though, Dark goes for a third base and Deer has his natural and goes for a fast robo once the cyber core gets up, implying some sort of aggression, which gets confirmed as he goes up to 7 gates. Dark is not able to see the high sentry immortal push out until Deer moves out, but by pulling drones is able to defend the all-in with ease. With a nice warp prism drop though, Deer is able to deal some damage and almost kills every single drone at the main, and including the main hatch itself, while appearing to be getting ready to perform another huge final attack. Deer though just decides to expand instead, and with Colossus tech forces Dark to retake his main and get a 4th and to play out the late game. Deer stays active with the warp prism and cleanly gets a cancel on the 5th base. Deer, pulling this game from the pits of despair, is given hope as Dark commits to an engagement under Time Warps and Storm, but pulls out before it can get too brutal. Dark, with a massive bank, also starts to pull some Immortals with Vipers while producing Ultras and heading to Greater Spire, showing some amazing late game play. Deer, however, is by no means a chump either and manages to pick off a few Ultras and a huge clump of Hydras near his 4th. Deer wants to capitalize so badly on the Hydra deaths and tries to break the natural of Dark, but as was foreshadowed, the Broodlords make their appearance and Dark deflects Deer's blinkless yet potentially murderous push and counters with a nice bank to take game number 2, bringing them to the rubber match. The final map between these two players is on Yonsu, and Deer goes for a Forge Fast Expand versus a Pool, then Hatch. Deer gets a quick +1 attack, then a Twilight for Blink, and +2 to secure his 3rd base, while Dark heads up to Hydras in a pretty quick Infestation Pit. Deer, catching Dark off guard as Hydras are coming out, and with great target firing, moves out with a stellar Blink Stalker based Gateway Army to deal damage at the 3rd and ends up forcing Dark to GG out, allowing Deer to advance on to the round of 16. Well, looking back, Life always finds a way and advances first in his group going 2-0, while Deer going 2-1 was able to win his rematch against Dark, forcing him to drop out of the group 1-2 along with YongHwa, who went 0-2. Remember, if you enjoyed this video, to please like it and share it with as many people as possible so I can have a shot in the GCC, and if you want to catch the games live, to check out twitch.tv/GSL. Like always, SCMothership checking out.